I just want to say when this all happened, I was 18. I was young, innocent, and naive. Now that I'm in my mid-20s, I would never let something like this happen again. It was my freshman year at college, and as one could imagine, I was excited to be on my own for once in my life. So excited to be on my own, in fact, I decided I was going to take summer classes on campus. That way, I wouldn't have to worry about coming in when the big crowd of freshmen came, and I would already know where everything was. Plus, it meant I could get away from my parents faster. But mainly, all I could think about was boys. You see, I had never dated anyone throughout high school, so I thought maybe I could find my one true love at college. Because of course, that's what all the movies told me, anyways. About 2 weeks go by, and me and one of my roommates, I had 4, were hanging out in the lounge area, showing off pictures from Instagram of our families, friends, etc. Well, my roommate, I'll call her Tracy, showed me a picture of her and these 2 guys. One of the guys was Tracy's boyfriend, and the other was Tracy's boyfriend's best friend. I'll call him Sean. Now, Sean was very attractive, and I told Tracy that he was hot. She told me that he went to the tech college near us, and that he was single. A day or 2 goes by after this, and she tells me she told Sean that I was interested in him, and he wanted to know if he could follow me on Instagram so he could DM me. At the time, I trusted Tracy, because she seemed like a cool, chill girl. Excitedly, I told her yes, but I wish I had never done so. I talked to Sean for about a week before I was comfortable enough to give him my phone number. At first, he seemed super sweet. He would always send me a text message in the mornings, telling me to have a good day at class, and he couldn't wait to FaceTime me that night. And we would FaceTime every night. At first, I loved it, because I'd never had a boy give me so much attention, and like I said before, I had never dated anyone. I was just over the moon that he was even interested enough in me to talk to me. But it started to get a bit annoying. He would text me almost every second of the day and try to FaceTime me at least 4 times. When I wouldn't respond to him, he would immediately ask if I was okay, why I wasn't answering him, if I was seeing another guy. If I was seeing another guy, it would make him really mad. I, of course, when seeing the messages, would try to reassure him I was okay and that I wasn't seeing anyone else. Like I said in the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing, so I didn't see it as a red flag. Things kept going downhill from there, though. It came to a certain point where he would start asking for pictures of me, either just selfies or pictures of me in the mirror. I wouldn't send them, though, because I wasn't really comfortable. He would kind of brush it off, saying that was fine, and I could send him pictures of myself whenever I was ready. One day I was in class for a long time because it was a lab. It started at 7 p.m. and wouldn't end until 10 p.m. that night. For those of you who don't know, labs in college can last anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, and mine just so happened to be 3 that night. Once class ended, I headed up to my dorm and took out my phone. I clicked the button on the side, lighting up the screen. I had 380 unread texts, 10 missed calls, and 3 voicemails from Sean. Before I could even react, or even read all of the messages, my phone started to ring. Instead of it being Sean, though, it was my dad. He called me up to make sure I was alright, because he had gotten an alert from the phone company that I had gotten all those hundreds of messages. I was still on his phone plan at the time. I don't know why, but I lied to him and laughed it off, saying that I was just in a group chat with a bunch of girls from school. Once I got off the phone with my dad, I quickly went to look at the messages I had gotten. Most of them were demanding why I wasn't answering him, and that he would come and find me if I didn't. The voicemails were crude, and mostly of him saying how he was going to find me, and when he did, he was going to punish me for not answering him. After this, I just completely blocked him on everything I could think of. I was completely freaked out by the whole thing. About a week goes by, and I start to slowly forget about the incident, trying hard not to think too much about it. At least, that was what I was trying to do. That whole week, though, I constantly felt like someone was watching me. I tried to brush it off as me being paranoid. At the end of the week, my roommate Tracy, who I had been avoiding, came up to me shouting at me, saying how I had broken Sean's heart, and he had called her crying, saying he didn't understand why I stopped talking to him. She didn't even let me get a word in because of how fast she was talking. Finally, she called me a self-centered bitch and walked away. I went to class right after that, not realizing in the heat of the moment that I'd forgotten to lock my dorm room. You see, I lived with 4 girls, and each girl had their own dorm room, which would lock from the outside with a key. Well, when I came back from class, I noticed my door was cracked open slightly. My heart dropped into my stomach. I hesitated going in. My hands were shaking terribly, but I finally got the nerve to push it open. Nothing. There was nothing out of place, it seemed. Even though there was nothing out of place at a first glance, I could have sworn I had closed the door before leaving for class. I don't remember if I locked it or not. I know for sure I closed it though, so I asked my roommates, including Tracy, if anyone had gone into my room today. They all denied it, even Tracy did, but I just knew in my heart someone had been in there. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't. So, one weekend when I knew that all my roommates were going to be out of town, I switched dorm buildings and roomed with a girl I had gotten to be close friends with. After I moved in with her, I told her all about everything that had happened, and she said that from then on she would walk with me to my classes. Thankfully, we had most of them together, except for the night lab that I had. She would walk with me to my lab, and wait till my lab was done to walk with me back to the dorm. One night, though, she had gone out of town to see her parents or something. I was walking back from my lab, and it had gotten really late that night again. I heard someone walking behind me, but I didn't pay any kind of attention to it, since class was just let out after all. But as I continued on walking, I could hear the steps getting closer and closer, so I started to pick up my walking speed. At this point, I could tell someone was following me, and I was afraid to look back. As the footsteps increased and got faster, I started to run as fast as I could. Now let me tell you, I'm not athletic by any means. Somehow though, through adrenaline probably, I was able to sprint to my dorm building, hearing someone still running behind me. Thankfully, I had thought ahead and already pulled out my keycard to get into the building. I swiped it on the door as soon as I got there and slammed it shut behind me. Looking up from slamming the door, I see someone who's probably about 10 feet away, staring at me. Even though through the person's hoodie that was up, I couldn't see their face. I could just tell by the way they were looking at me. I just knew it was Sean. Not wasting any more time, I went to the RA that was up that night, bawling and telling him what had just happened. He called the police, and I told them everything too. They basically said they couldn't do anything, since I didn't see his face. Even if I thought it was Sean, maybe I was just being paranoid since it was nighttime, and I was walking by myself. After all this, I called my friend, and told her what happened. She never went out of town again if I had my late-night classes. I eventually decided college wasn't for me, and I dropped out. I moved back to my home state, and went to cosmetology school and became a hairdresser. I still haven't dated anyone yet, though. Maybe it's the fear of something like that happening again. I'll never know. I do know that I'm super careful with who I talk to now, and who I give my social media and phone number to. I'm still scared to go places by myself, even though it's been years, and I'm states away. Trigger warning. Mentions of abuse are in this story. Please don't read if you are triggered by abuse. I love my mom, but damn, does she have bad judgment when it comes to dudes. She got 2 other crazy exes, but those stories are a whole nother thing. I also haven't written in a long time, so I'm very sorry if this isn't explained too well. I did my best from what I remember happening, but I may have forgotten some small details at this point. Getting right into it, when I was about 6 or 7 years old, my mom started dating this guy, which for the sake of this story, can be called Rob, easy and basic. And he brought with him his son, who can be called Tim. Me, my mom, and older sister, had moved in with them when school was about to be in session again. All was pretty good for a bit, for about 2 years actually, other than some minor things. He had this toxic masculinity. He constantly felt the need to put everyone else down and be aggressive all the time. I'm not sure what really made him snap one day. Could have been the fact that he was drinking, but it wasn't only when he was drunk after that. He grew very mean to Tim and I basically overnight. He wasn't so much physically abusive to me or my sister, but he was to Tim. He was more mentally to me, and we never really did find out why he switched up so fast. When I first started to witness the abusive things he did to Tim, I became very scared, very fast. He knew that though, and that's exactly what it seemed like he wanted. This went on for months and months. Once my mom found out about the abuse happening, and he saw she wasn't going to put up with that, Rob didn't like that at all. He started throwing a whole fit, straight up like a baby, kicking things and yelling at her to not go while crying. And that's something he always tried to do, guilt trip everyone by crying. At one point, he had even punched a hole in the wall of the house we were renting. I don't remember most of that day or what was said. I just knew that at that point we were finally going to leave. After we had moved out, it was an instant feeling of relief, even though I felt bad that Tim had to be stuck with that man all by himself. After the official break-off of everything, though, that's when he started to follow us. First, it was just at stores. We'd see him in one aisle, then the next, and the next. Even when we would walk way across the store, he would just happen to show up. It definitely didn't feel like a coincidence. This kept on happening for a couple of weeks in a row, whenever we went anywhere. We would even try to go back and forth between different stores, grocery shopping at one week, and then the other store the next time. Once we stopped seeing him around, my mom said she felt a little less anxious about leaving the house, but that was only until about a week later. That's when the endless amount of phone calls and emails started. She'd block one number, but then he'd just call back right away with a different one, or email her with a new email. The man was dedicated to crying to her about her leaving. This went on for months and months, until he started to get even creepier. At this time, I was in basketball in elementary, so on game night, we would usually get home at around dark, or after it had already become quite dark during winter. One night we had left the game a bit later than usual, making it pitch black when we got home. I tell you, this man was at our house 2 months after their split. My heart fell to the floor when I saw his car idling there. Then, seeing him standing on our porch, peeking through all the windows, my heart just stopped. I could tell my mom was trying to be calm because she didn't want me to be scared, so she just kept driving and hoped he didn't see us. Thankfully, he hadn't. We drove around the surrounding blocks a few times before trying to go back home. When we finally pulled back up, he wasn't there anymore. My mom didn't feel safe just going in, knowing he had had violent tendencies, especially when he was angry. To be on the safe side, she called a friend to walk through the house with us, just to have a third person there. Thankfully, the house was all good, and he was nowhere to be found. This similar type of situation happened again, except this time I was home alone. I was sick from school, and my mom had to work, along with my sister, who wasn't really home to experience much of this, which is why she wasn't mentioned much previously. I looked out the window and saw him peeking in like a complete creep. My adrenaline got so high once I saw him, my 10-year-old self knowing I couldn't do much, nor could I move from behind the front door without him seeing me. I started pounding on the front door, which scared him off pretty fast, thankfully. I'm pretty sure he expected no one to be home, or I'm not really sure even what he was looking for, or who. After this, I only saw him at the store a couple of more times, each and every aisle once again. Weird enough, though, after a couple of more weird calls and voice messages, it all just suddenly stopped. We never saw from him or heard from him again. Well, up until about a year ago. More emails, another apology, yet another block from my mom. It's been almost 8 years now, but Rob, let's never meet again. I know my story won't be as scary or creepy as others, but I was really scared then, and even now I am, every time I see him on the street. Oh, English isn't my first language, so sorry if I make some, or a lot, of faults. At that time, I was 13. I was in a group of friends who was really toxic to me. I won't enter in details about that, but I didn't really know what friendship was back then, and I didn't really have any friends before them either. Well, one day, there was this guy who was 13 too. I'll name him Thomas, that my friends just decided to target. I don't even know. They were always mean to me, but never to other people. I was, and still am in a way, the type of person who's just fine with other people being mean to me, but as soon as they get testy with another person, it makes me really angry. Thomas didn't live with his parents, and my friends had decided to mock him for that. While I jumped in and defended him, I yelled, I got angry. It was the first time I had ever yelled back at them, and they were angry too, of course, but they still talked to me even though I felt stupid for letting them do so. I sort of became friends with Thomas, well, at least for one day, but the immediate day after that, he straight up told me he was in love with me, and that was the first time a boy had ever told me that, and I felt really uncomfortable. I didn't know what to do. I just said that I didn't know if I felt the same way, and that he should ask me again later, after I'd had some time to think. I know it's stupid of me, and I still feel guilty, but hey, I didn't know him enough to answer his love for me. The day after, he asked again. Same answer. It was like that for a few days, but one day, I finally just told him no. He seemed very angry, but he just walked away after that. I thought after that our friendship would be over, but no. He came to me the next day and told me that one day he would make me love him. I just laughed awkwardly and didn't answer, but that's where it all begins. At first, he just talked to me every time. I couldn't even get away from him. It kind of annoyed me, but I said nothing, because he was all alone, and I felt really sorry for him. One day, though, in the morning, he showed up at my door out of nowhere and told me that from that day on, we would always walk to school together. It scared me a lot, because I never told him where I lived, but I thought that maybe my friends had done so. When I asked them, though, they admitted they hadn't. They told me they'd never talked to a guy like him, and that I was stupid for doing so in the first place. After that, I was always with him, literally. He knew when I finished my classes, and was always waiting for me to get me back to my home. Every morning, even if he started earlier or later than me, he would always be there. He didn't even care if he was late to school. After school, I would just stay at home because friends never invited me to go out with them, and I was scared to go alone for some reason. One day, though, my cousin, a boy a little older than me, invited me to the cinema. I said yes because he and I were very close. I don't know why, but I decided to tell Thomas about that. I told him that I was really excited because I liked my cousin a lot, and we very rarely got to spend time together. He seemed angry and asked me if he could come with us. I told him no. I was already a little bit scared of him and always felt uncomfortable around him. So, 2 days after that, it was time for me to go to the cinema. When I got there, though, I saw Thomas leaning against a wall. I thought that it was probably just a coincidence. He saw me, smiled at me, and that was all. I saw the movie, and when I got out of the cinema, though, he was still there. I said goodbye to my cousin and tried to quickly go to my home, but Thomas ran to me and began to talk to me like it was nothing. He asked me how the movie was, what my cousin did, if I'd see him again soon, if for me he was just someone from my family, or if I was secretly in love with him and that he could take care of him for me. It really made me freaked out. I told him that he was just my cousin, and that was the truth. I would never fall in love with him. That's just weird. Just before I went back home, he asked me for my number. I said that I didn't remember it. Once again, it was the truth. I never give my number to anyone, not even my friends. But all of a sudden he started to yell at me, saying that I had lied to him, that I just didn't want to give it to him, and then he walked away. The night after that, I received a text from him. He said he was sorry for the fact that he had yelled at me, and that he wouldn't do it again. I immediately asked him how he got my number in the first place, and he told me that it was none of my business. I didn't answer and went to sleep, but when I woke up he had sent me loads of texts. The first were really nice, but the last really mean. He was insulting me because I wasn't answering him. I felt guilty and asked him to forgive me. He did, and like always, we went to school together. He started to get really close to me as we were walking, and then just like that, he asked me to go out with him again. I told him no, and just insulting me, saying I was a slut for making him believe that I wanted to go with him, but that I didn't have a choice because I was already his, and that nobody had a right to talk to me anymore. He slapped me, and I started crying and yelling at him. The people in the street didn't even interfere. I think they thought it was just a fight between two kids. After that, I just did the rest of the way to school alone, and I spent the day alone too because of him. I didn't talk to my friends for days because he just wouldn't let me. I could tell they were angry at me because of that. I told the teacher I didn't feel very well, and they let me go home early. Thankfully, Thomas wasn't waiting for me, and I got to be home alone too. Then, he sent me a text asking me where I was, why I was abandoning him, that he was sorry and he wouldn't ever do it again, that he loved me and he would love me forever even. I didn't answer. I still feel guilty about that somewhat, but I was just so scared of him. The next morning, I got to school way earlier just to avoid him, but of course he came to talk to me at the pause. He said sorry again, but I didn't even answer. I just let him talk. My silence didn't even seem to bother him, and he just started to talk about whatever. We went home together again, and just like that, he grabbed me and kissed me. I pushed him away and told him that was enough. I would tell the teacher. He laughed a little and told me it was cute, before saying goodbye. The next day, I got to my friends and told them everything. Even if they were really mean to me, they were also strangely protective when it came to me. I don't know why. They just got to him. I don't know what they told him, but after that, he never talked to me again. I mean, he tried, but every time he saw my friends around, he would just walk away, and eventually he gave up altogether. I don't know if it's his fault. He was young. We were both young. He was alone, maybe even sad, and I don't blame him too much. I even feel guilty because I couldn't love him back. I hope he's okay now. I even hope he's happy. And that's all that matters to me in the end.